Good evening, my name is Ziyadeh, and this is my presentation of the E91 final project. I want to be brief, and so I'll just review two aspects of the project that I got to develop myself. Specifically, these are the rollout of the Ansible playbooks, specifically with the configuration management of Jenkins. The second responsibility that I had was the authorship and deployment of the pipelines themselves, and so this includes three pipelines: dev, stage, and master. The pipelines do mainly four things, which we'll review now. The first is actually step 0 would be listening to an incoming webhook from GitHub. The first would be pulling code from the dev branch of said repository. The second would be deploying that code to a development container. The third would be running tests to confirm that the deployment was in fact operational and successful. And the fourth would be merging two branches. And so let's take a look at that Jenkins file. So the first thing that we do in the pipeline is limit the job to a specific node. So on the back end of Jenkins, we have a development node with an IP address, and an SSH agent is deployed on that machine. This is what keeps the connection alive. It's what allows us to run the job specifically on the development machine where we want the container to run and be deployed. The first stage is to pull the dev branch from the public GitHub repository using these credentials. After that, we go on and we can deploy the container. First, we want to clean up from any previous jobs by removing any Docker images or containers. And then we want to actually cd into the code repository itself and do a Docker build from the Docker file off the code repository. At that point, we can go and deploy the dev container from the dev image, and here we're mapping port 80 to 80. And so we should be able to view this web page, this application, through a typical HTTP web request. The next step is to run the test, and what we do here is, I'll explain this in a second, but we're actually running this on the local Jenkins machine. This is not running on dev, but we're actually overriding that and running this locally. The main reason why is because we're running a curl here, and we want to see that the curl actually, the request comes from outside of the machine. We don't want to put localhost here. We actually want to put the full IP address to confirm that the HTTP response that we're getting is a 200. And so if that's true, then we can then we continue on to the next stage. Otherwise, we will return false, and the job will fail. And so the next step is a merge, and what we're doing here is pretty long but yet robust command. Where we're checking out a specific stage. We're making sure that the remote repository is not ahead of us in any way, and so we'll do a pull. And at that point, we'll merge dev, and then we will push the staging branch back to origin. And so essentially, this is the cookie cutter template of stage. It's a very similar 4-step process with some variables changed here, and of course, we're running on a different machine. And we're testing a different IP address, but essentially it's the same pipeline. And then if we look at master, it's much shorter since we've already built and tested twice. Now all we're doing is simply pulling the master code, which has already stepped up from dev to staging, and now it's been merged into master, and then we're simply deploying it to the GCP container. At this point, we know that it's good, we know it's robust, and we have just witnessed what it's like to go from pushing your code into dev, having it merged to stage, and then having it deployed to a production environment hands-free. And so we'll do a test of that right now. Log in here. We'll go into the public GitHub code repository itself. We'll make a small change. Save that file. We'll commit it. We'll say that this is a test. And then we will push it to the origin, specifically to the dev branch. I'll authenticate with my public credentials. And that failed. because I used the wrong credentials. Okay, the push was successful. Let's go ahead and verify that push. Okay, and this is our push here. And now what we should see on dev, now what we see on dev is that it kicked off build number 50 based on the latest GitHub hook. And so if we look at the GitHub hook log, we can see that at 6 o'clock we had this push event. So what this will do now, if we go back up to the dashboard, is this will finish building. At that point it will do a merge with the staging branch, and then build staging will actually be kicked off because the hooks that it receives are from the staging branch itself. And so that's my presentation. Thank you very much for watching.